thank you all for coming, and let me tell you what we're going to try to do here, and we're going to try to be as quick as possible so we see as many of you here. We probably have questions. So we're going to cover three main areas. First, we're going to do some background, kind of give you the narrative that has led to where we are today, and then talk about what I refer to, lack of better terms, the Amazon Wars, which were fought this year in different states. And then lastly, Wright's going to spend a lot of time talking about what's next and what steps should be taken, and which leads us to, who are sitting at the panel today. And Wright Andrews is the founder of Butera and Andrews, but he had been the chief legislative assistant for Sam Nunn. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Sam Nunn, in terms of the Cold War era senators, he's probably among the top 50 in terms of being influential. And speaking of 50, Wright was named by Washingtonian magazine as one of the 50 most influential lobbyists in Washington. And which is a further sign of that is that he was elected twice as president of the American League of Lobbyists. Now, Wright, this picture here actually is from the Washingtonian article. Well, this is some significance of where you're sitting there.
Yeah, for those of you who wonder how the term lobbying got going, lobbyist, many, many years ago in the lobby of the hotel where we were posing for that picture, that was a place that people used to come and lobby members of Congress. They talked to them in the lobby. So they came up with the term lobbyist.
And also it was President Grant as well.
Back in Grant's term. And it's, very historic and so forth. But let me make one other point about lobbyists in general. We're not as bad as people say.
All right, and which brings me to a little more humble origins. I'm the founder of the Internet Law Center and the co-chair of the California Bar Cyberspace Committee. And prior to that, I'd been the Assistant General Counsel and Director of Governmental Affairs for ValueClick. And I do have a background in politics as well. I got my start in politics at the age of 15 with Senator Pell. And my, claim to fame is that I was a co-founder and national co-chair of the Democratic National Committee's Young Professional and Outreach Arm, fundraising arm during the Clinton era, which was known as the Saxophone Club. More importantly, I began my career working for one of Washington's most influential lobbyists, who happens to be here today. But Ray, I have some bad news for you.
Give it to me, man.
You weren't my first. Actually, and I mention this because the first lobbyist I actually worked with was a nun. So when you have stereotypes of what a lobbyist is, just picture a nun. So we're going to talk a little bit about the background and how we got here and put things in context. By the way, that's the Independent Man, which is on top of the Capitol of Rhode Island. And as you know, Rhode Island's obviously a big part of this issue. For starters, the affiliates have three hurdles they have to overcome as a matter of public policy, just because as a historical nature. The first one, I think this one will kind of speak for itself.
You don't have to pass an IQ test to be in the Senate, though.
Say the head of the Senate Commerce Committee, which regulates e-commerce, explain.
The internet is not something that you just dump something on. It's not a big truck. It's a series of tubes.
He was the senator who was the chairman of the committee responsible for the internet.
It's not a big truck. It's a series of tubes.
You don't have to pass an IQ test to be in the Senate.
So you're dealing with the fact that there are a lot of people who are just technologically, let's just say, ill-informed. And so that's one hurdle. The second hurdle is there are some people who, for some reason or another, treat the internet as in a separate way than they would otherwise, whether it's because of a paranoia about technology or some utopian notion that the internet should be different, or just a belief that it makes sense to regulate some conduct on the internet, but not regulate the same conduct in the offline space. So that's another hurdle you have to overcome. The third hurdle is kind of the more significant, and it's just that the internet as a whole historically has been slow to get involved in the policy game. And a case in point is if you look at the net neutrality debate. And the net neutrality debate features largely a number of prominent internet companies against the telecoms who control the bandwidth. And the big dogs in that fight are AT&T and Google, which actually have about the equivalent market capitalization. And as you can see, Google is getting badly outspent. It's closing the gap. And as the industry as a whole is starting to catch up. But just in terms of the narrative for this discussion, we're kind of coming from behind. Now, from the state legislative perspective, they have one big hurdle, and it is a big hurdle. The states have an extreme fiscal crisis going on. This year, the budgets that every state just passed, they had to deal with, the 38 states had to deal with a deficit that was over 10% of what the prior year budget was. So to put that in context, that meant they had to cut the equivalent, or find revenue for the equivalent of what for most states would be their highway and correction budget. And so if you think we've gotten over the worst, we haven't actually. Next year is going to be worse. Already, 13 states have projected deficits for next year greater than 10%. And you can see some of them are already over 20%, including Alaska, which may explain why Sarah Palin took an early vacation. And so this is how state legislators view the issue. And they put it in that dire terms. We're talking about fiscal Armageddon. Anyone want to do Wisdom of Britney Spears? So the starting point for everything was the New York law, which passed 2 years ago. And before the New York law, the general rule was you could not tax, in order to tax someone for sales tax, the company had to have an in-state presence. And so you have a company like Amazon, which only has a physical presence in Washington. So even though it is the online equivalent of Walmart, it only pays sales tax in one state. Well, people in New York didn't think that was a good idea. And they saw a way for some easy revenue. And so they redefined what was a nexus with the state. And they said, well, Amazon, you have people in the state of New York who are generating sales for you. They're sending traffic to your websites, and you're giving them commissions. So that sounds to us like sufficient nexus so that we're going to define that as a physical presence, despite the case law to date. Well, what gave, and New York did very well by it, better than expected. What gave the law some impetus, obviously not everyone did well. And a big issue in New York was the large number of affiliates that were terminated after the law was passed. And we're seeing the same thing happen in the other states that have adopted the law. What gave the whole movement some wind behind its sail was when Amazon's lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the tax was thrown out. And now that's on appeal, but that was seen as a green light for some states. So we move to the Amazon wars. And just like the Dodgers and the Giants before them, the New York Amazon tax moved to California. And this is the sponsor of the California bill, who basically, this is what she's thinking. She's thinking budget and level playing field. So we had 8 major states that had significant legislation this year. And of the 8, 4 passed it. And there's a question mark by North Carolina, just because they only passed theirs over the weekend, and it has been signed. So 4 states have passed it. It was vetoed in California and Hawaii, but it is law now in North Carolina and Rhode Island. The governors that did veto the law specifically mentioned pressure from Amazon and others as a reason for terminating and vetoing the law. So what's next? Well, for starters, you're not going to just have the internet Amazon tax to worry about. You're going to have a whole bunch of issues to worry about. Congress, when they come back, is going to introduce privacy legislation that's going to regulate websites in terms of, you can get rid of the rain, in terms of privacy policy requirements and behavioral targeting issues, opt-in, opt-out. There's going to be a lot at play there. The FTC has a busy agenda. And then if you think 8 states was busy, you're going to have, if you have 8 states in 2010, you're lucky. You're likely to have a lot more as a result of what we saw this year. And so what lessons have we learned? And this is just some gratuitous shots of Rhode Island, so people don't hate it since I'm from there. Wright, you want to talk a little bit about what we've learned from our discussions with the state legislators?
Well, from what let me give people my perspective to talk about first. I come at things as a professional lobbyist who has lobbied extensively for 3 decades before federal and state legislators, okay? There are many, many industries like yours that have not been overly politically active. Sometimes they squeak by. A lot of times they get hit. They get hit very bad. If in your case, this is sort of a bottom line, and I'll cover 2 things. If in your case you don't get your industry organized, you're going to be hit, I think, based on all I can see, and certainly based on Bennet, who follows this much closer on an industry-specific basis. You've got to wake up and get active. If all of you in this room decided to get active, that would be a start. But there are several thousand people here today, and quite a few thousand more out there who were not able to attend the summit. I suspect that one thing you have hopefully coming out of this will be able to do is talk to some of your friends and colleagues and help wake them up that all of you are sitting there sort of as targets, and it's going to be coming at you. Now, in terms of what we've learned and so forth, as a common sense lobbying position, okay?
Actually, why don't we talk about some of the states in particular? Is that where you were going to go?
No, I was trying to follow what you had up
I'm
there.
sorry, yeah. We talked to people in the states that had Amazon legislation this year, and the feedback was positive in some states. California, definitely there was a presence, and it was noted. Affiliates had organized legislative days, and they thought that was very positive. And some people in Sacramento were monitoring some of the blogs on this issue. So, and in Maryland, although it wasn't really a factor as to why the bill didn't pass, people I talked to there didn't take note of the fact that people like Discovery Channel were opposed to the bill. So that's the upside. Although in California, as good as you guys did, the bill still passed. And but for a veto, it would be law right now. And obviously in some of the other states, there wasn't as much of a presence noted. Hawaii was one, and Rhode Island as well. But in fact, in one state, a member told me that what he was hearing from the affiliates was it wasn't that big an issue because they don't do that much business with Amazon. Obviously missing the point that there are other companies that may terminate them. So that education effort has to get out there. So it definitely was a big step forward for the industry, especially the affiliates on this issue. But, as Wright going to say, there's probably more that could be done.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just on that point generally, in terms of what we've learned. I think from Bennett's summary right then, we've learned, at least in the past, you've made a little bit of progress, but in other states, you've had very minimal activity. You've only seen this starting to take off now, and it tends in the legislative process to come back year after year, especially with these huge budget deficits. The issues will be raised again and again, and you cannot simply assume that somebody else is going to take care of you, or you can't stick your head in the sand and say, oh, this is really not going to happen. You've got real risk there. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, and one thing is, I've lobbied up on Capitol Hill and then Sacramento, and members there and aides always tell me that it's important that you get there early and then talk to them, not at the 11th hour, but at the second hour, and as the issue is developing, because when you call them in the 11th hour, now they know who you are, and you develop a certain credibility. And so that's an important point.
Yeah, legislators make decisions whether you like it or not, okay? They will make some of the damnedest, most uninformed, bad decisions you can imagine. They're going to make the decisions. The only thing that is going to change those decisions in so many cases is where the people step in and ensure that they are at a minimum informed of the basic policy and factual arguments. If they're going to shaft you, at least let them do it on an informed basis, okay? So, you've got to get the basic facts to them, but you need to do a lot more than that, okay? As Bennet made the point of timing, okay? You don't wait until the gun is at your head. You get in there early, you get organized, okay? You need to build and establish relationships. You need to have an ongoing presence. Not rocket science. Just like in business, you need to do your networking. You've got to get people working on a regular basis with the legislators, with their staff. You need to get organized. Organized includes trying to work together through an association or lobbying coalition. What does that do? It does a lot of things. It gives you an ability on a cost-effective basis to maintain a regular presence that's monitoring what's going on all over the country and in Washington. Okay, it can be very cost-effective. It allows you to have greater political clout. Instead of 2 or 3 of you trying to lobby in a particular state or in Washington, all of a sudden you network together, and particularly when you use the internet, you've got the potential to pull so many more people together. You have a professional lobbyist, which, I've got a bias for, having been a professional lobbyist a long time and having been president of the Lobbyist Trade Association, but someone on the ground that can lead you through the corridors and that has a sense of how the process works. But you have to be involved yourselves. You need to be establishing relationships with the state legislators, with the members of Congress. There's a job for the professional, and there's a job for the individual industry members.
And on that point, if you want to have, as Wright mentions, key player involvement in the slide, if you think of the movie The Godfather, the very beginning in the wedding scene, there's someone who comes to Don Corleone and he says, why are you just coming to me now? How come you've never come to me before? Why are you asking me, this favor on my daughter's wedding day? And he eventually helps them. And the industry needs godfathers in every state capital and in Congress. And you need to build that relationship. And getting a key player can be important. We're going to show you a clip.
Just move the mouse.
Here we go. Just a couple of...
What is the price?
This,
We asked the other side.
Ted
What
Kennedy
is
gave
the
this
price
speech,
that you want
and
from these working men and women? How much more do we
in the
have to
news
give
that night.
to the private sector and the business? How much
It was the soundbite of the day
dollars
on that
more
issue.
are you asking? Are you
And it wasn't
requiring?
just because of what he
When
said.
does the greed stop?
It was because of who said it.
The lost cause is harder than for any
And
other.
of course, Jimmy Stewart, he might get, having him support you might be a good thing too. Obviously, it's nothing more American than Jimmy Stewart. But getting the right person on your side is important, as well as having the right message.
And I'm going to stay right here and fight for this lost cause.
Even if it is
Even if
lost
this
cause.
room gets filled with lies like these. What? Over?
And
You
sometimes
say over?
you need a leader.
Nothing is over until we decide it is. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
German? Forget it, he's rolling.
It ain't over now. Because when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Who's with me? Let's go! Go on!
That's actually kind of a good metaphor for the industry.
Yeah, somehow, from what folks in the industry have told me, you've got a few Belushis who will run out that door, but a whole lot of them aren't following him. And I suspect you better wake up, or you might be in the condition of a lot of other folks that have made that fatal mistake.
Do you want to go over some of the 10 key points when you do meet
Yeah,
with
this on the key points. This was just an example thrown in. As to direct lobbying or lobbying when you're talking to a member of Congress, for example, or their staff, okay? Because as I mentioned earlier, it's not just guys like me who go in and make it at the professional level. You have to come in and have meetings with them, talk to them, educate them. And these are just some very common sense. Be informed about them. Don't walk into their office and say, what committees are you on? You can look that up on the net in a second. Learn something about them, what they're interested in. Be prepared. You've only generally got about 15 minutes to make your cases. But you have to be very organized, get there on time, know what the issues are. You need to be very focused. Go in and say, senator or staff member, whoever, here's what we're interested in. Here's why it concerns us. Here's how it impacts your district or your state.
Actually, we have an example of that. Here's an example, I believe it's a healthcare. Yeah, in the healthcare debate.
Yeah.
That was used in showing, California's specific impact.
Absolutely. Showing the impact, California specific, an issue I'm working on right now. We are organizing a whole range of companies that have a major interest in California to the tune of billions of dollars. We're pulling them together, getting that local employment data, jobs data, et cetera, to give when we have meetings with them and the California delegations. That is just critically important to have.
When I was with ValueClick, they had offices in I think 7 states, and so when I met with 7 senators, I told them where it was a significant number, how many employees we actually had in that state, and how many other of our major competitors also had employees in that state.
One point I'll just make. It is sometimes amazing to me as someone who's done it all these years, but when you go into a congressional office, you cannot imagine how busy and harried the folks are, okay? They, in most times, are really, really overworked. They are having dozens of meetings a day. You can go in and have the best damn meeting with them and go out feeling, boy, they really got it. And oftentimes they did for 5 minutes until this other guy walks in and talks on something else. Used to happen to me when I was a legislative aide. I thought I was a pretty bright kid. You know, I could get it for a while. But unless people came in and reinforced that time and again, you know, you would lose it.
That's happened in this space. In 2004, the House of Representatives passed a spyware bill that would have defined spyware to include such pernicious things as HTML, cookies, those things you try to save your kids from, and so a lot of us in the industry, we just did a blitz on Capitol Hill, and I was able to participate in a meeting with all the staff, key staff of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and we basically gave them an Internet 101. And halfway through this presentation, the senior counsel went, "Oh, I get it. You guys aren't so bad." So it was a major victory, and also a surprise that it took her that long to get it. But 2 years later, she had the same bill with the same language once again. And so I just had to make a phone call saying, "Remember that meeting we had?" And then say, "Okay, I get it." You just had to remind them, just like Wright said.
Yeah, time and again. You reinvent the wheel many times.
Now, we included this because a lot of people aren't going to understand the word affiliate. It's actually, as a lawyer, I hate the term because it implies a legal relationship that doesn't exist. But and so explaining who an affiliate is an important thing. And I thought Linkshare did a great job here, humanizing it, making it personal. And so you read this, you know that, hey, that could be one of my constituents. And they did it all in under 100 words.
Yeah. Bennet, can you do a quick flip back to the other points on that 10 points?
Please don't throw your glasses. 10 points? Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, again, all of these common sense things, but this type little learning tool here, which again, not rocket science. What you have for industries, you put together an overall political program, okay? One important part of that is to get folks like you to come in for meetings. When you're coming in for meetings, your professional lobbyist or your association, which has your lobbyist, briefs you, goes over things, but you do your part on all of these. So when you divide up in teams, Bennet mentioned dividing up and going to some hill visits, you often will divide 3 or 4 of you up, send you out to a whole range of meetings in advance, all of those scheduled on a piece of paper, and information given, background about the people you're meeting with, your nexus to them, et cetera. And, you just look at something like that. Just to say, hey, yeah, I do need to be nice. I do need to request something. And by God, I sure need to follow up and send them a note on the email. Thanks for meeting with me. Remember, here are my points. We have so many jobs in your district, et cetera.
Now, one thing is you want to try to define the debate. Just because your opponent characterizes it one way, don't allow that to be the way it's characterized, because then you're on the defensive. So, for example, this presentation is called the advertising tax. It's not called the Amazon sales tax. The advertising tax. That makes it sound like something bad. Wow, we're taxing advertising? You're going to be kidding me. And so it creates an initial response. Whereas, actually, the sponsor of the California bill, her staff says that, well, a California resident has a duty to pay sales tax regardless of whether or not it's collected. That the state obviously doesn't go after the consumers to collect, but all their point is, well, it's not really a tax. We're just collecting a tax that is already out there, but is not collected. And so you want to frame this. They're saying it's not a tax. You want to say it is a tax.
Okay.
And so, I think we try to do this faster than normal. Do you want to? I think you covered associations.
Yeah, I covered associations, but one important thing I didn't cover, which I wanted to mention in here, is in Washington and in state legislatures, whether you like it or not, whether it makes you sick to your stomach, okay, money matters, okay, making political contributions is more important than ever before. It kills me every time I write a $1,000 check to some indigent senator or congressman's campaign committee. I think of what I could have a hell of a good time with that. That said, I'm no fool. I see how it works. It is very, very important. If, you give somebody $1, that doesn't buy you much of a cup of coffee in the political campaign process today, given Bennet, that's that.
Thanks,
Given what they have to pay for advertisers and all right? If you give them $100, now, most folks who aren't in politics would say never, would say, that gets their attention. In Washington, sad thing about it, $1,000 doesn't get their attention, okay? Every night I get invited to probably a dozen political campaign events. A cheap one is $500. A ordinary one is $1,000. And if you want to be a platinum sponsor, this level of host and so forth, $2,500, $5,000. Now, again, all those points is that
there's also PACs, though.
Well, no,
so
right.
You don't have to write
No,
that.
well, unfortunately, some of us have to write those. But in addition, if you have a association, you can establish a political action committee, for example. In that case, everybody in here, maybe you give them the committee at least $100. Then when you have people that are your key players that you're trying to establish relationships with, they invite you to a campaign event. Well, you use the PAC money. It didn't cost each of you too much, but you have a collective pot.
Because there's enough of you.
Because precisely, there's enough of you, you can spend it efficiently. A lot of you, no disrespect intended, you wouldn't know who you really ought to give your $100 to in terms of the most effective. You're out running your businesses. You're not sitting there following on a day-to-day basis who is really going to influence the political process. But if you have a PAC, an organized effort, that is where you get your expertise, your targeting in, and you get the biggest bang for your bucks.
A real powerful group in Washington is the insurance agents, right?
Yep.
And there's a reason. There are insurance agents in everyone's district, just like there are affiliates in everyone's district. And they have a presence. And, they make contributions. It may not be a lot, but since there's many of them, they're able to, fund a PAC that has some influence. And then one thing, and then we're going to close and take questions, is in terms of making your message, remember the Ted Stevens lesson. Keep it simple. They may not necessarily understand how everything works, so try to break it down to its core components. And this is like what we used when we did the Internet 101 presentation. We explained how cookies worked, and that that image that's on that website isn't really on that website. It's not like a physical newspaper. So just try to speak in their language. And so we appreciate the time. We're happy to take your questions. In green.
Hi, Bennet. I'm Rebecca Madigan.
Hi, Rebecca.
I haven't talked to you in a while. I'm the founder of a nonprofit trade association, the
PMA.
Market Alliance, representing this industry. And we spearheaded the grassroots efforts in the various states. But you're absolutely right. It was the 11th hour. We couldn't get ahead of it, this past year. It has been very challenging. But I would add the most challenging thing that we've been very successful. And we were, it was the affiliate community that really got involved in the states where we blocked it. But the challenge we've had is the message of keeping it simple. And we don't have a unified message. That's been the other thing. Everybody's going in and talking to their legislators, saying something different, and then all of a sudden the legislators are confused. And so what we found over and over in every state except North Carolina, the message that rang true is that I'm a small business owner and you're about to devastate my business. The legislators didn't really care about, CPC or PPC or CPA or any of those acronyms, or even that we were doing what type of online advertising we were doing. So that was the other thing. We had to really be clear that we weren't selling, we were advertising, and that we were small businesses about to be devastated.
That's why I thought the link share things were so effective.
Yes, exactly. And it put a personal face on it.
Exactly.
That's why it's so important for people to go to their legislators and put their face in front of it, but really just talk about your business. But North Carolina was different. They are so hell-bent on screwing Amazon. And they refuse, and they even said, we don't care about your business, it's about time Amazon pay what's due to the state, which, of course, Amazon severed their programs, so they're not collecting sales tax. So it was this, really bad circular problem. But I think we have to figure out how to get ahead of that for this coming year and really prepare.
We've been in that situation, right? Remember?
Well, absolutely. And, when you talk about North Carolina versus other states, having lobbied on issues in a range of states, it really can be mind-boggling sometimes how different states react in their legislative process. In some states, you have just 2 or 3 people. They really run the whole show. In others, you've got a range of people. Sometimes it's a governor dominating, whatever. But you've got all of these things, and I guess my overall message to you is you've got to get organized. You've got to get organized early. You need to be working on your messaging. As you said, there are different things that work. Small business is usually one of the best things, particularly to a state legislator, that you can make the rounds. But there's a tremendous amount of simple organizing that can and should be done. You can't do that unless people wake up, unless people put money into an association. If you do those things, though, you can be very, very effective, disproportionately effective. And in this industry, while you've got lots of small businesses, you won't have nearly as many of those small businesses in the future unless they band together and get more active.
All right. One thing you said when we spoke in Vegas was that you're surprised as a lobbyist how much time you spend meeting with other lobbyists. And I think that's what your point is. Part of your lobbying is actually internal within the industry and to develop the message.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the things. When I came off Capitol Hill, I was used to people coming in and lobbying me all the time. I had no idea how much time it took downtown, as we say, where you're meeting with other industry representatives, other trade groups, working out common messages, themes, coordinating, saying you go out and contact so-and-so, you contact so-and-so, then we'll hit them both, we'll get together, you have coordinating meetings, many, many hours. In fact, I would say on any major lobbying campaign, you're likely to spend 85% of your time in the background work of putting it all together and making sure that the orchestration is right, the messaging is right, and that other 15% is the time that's spent actually lobbying. But again, you can put together these programs without great difficulty. You just have to have the will and the wisdom to do so.
Any other questions?
I'm curious, in North Carolina, they had the initial, it was part of the budget. The governor and the Secretary of Revenue had come out, and by the way, I'm Melanie Seri with Affiliate Voice, and I've been actively working on this issue as well. The governor and the Secretary of Revenue said if it not included in the budget bill, what they were going to do is go to their backup plan. And the backup plan was to enforce the current existing ability that the Secretary of Revenue has to determine what a retailer is and to redefine what a solicitor is.
Administratively.
That's right in the code right now. So how do you lobby against something like this that's already existing? Because it was my understanding, and this is coming from their people, so it may or may not be 100% factual, is that the Secretary of Revenue at any time in the states that have the law or the definition of retail this way, at any time they can redefine that to include that. They did that with mail order, and they'll do that with an internet.
The Secretary of Revenue, I doubt, is an elected office. It's been an appointed office, right?
So how do you lobby to fight against
that? That person's appointed by a political person. Right. And so that's your pressure point. you go to the elected people who are responsible for that person, and you lobby there.
Yeah. I mean, you can try to lobby them in a range of ways. Now, first, you're not going to win them all, okay? But you go to a committee chairman. You try to have some allies there, committee chairman who may determine the agency's budget, for example. Okay, you try to get them to contact them and say, "Don't do this to these small business people," or you go sometimes to the press. I mean, I think the press can be extremely effective if you can spend your messages right to the people in the press. Some of you may be from the press. I mean, I think
goes to framing.
No, I mean, I think it's very, very important because politicians, damn if they don't read what's written in the press, and that can influence what's going on.
Now, in a state like Virginia, which has similar, the wording is similar in like Virginia and in other states, similar to what was pointed out to me in North Carolina. So now we have to target.
And Virginia has elections coming up too.
Yeah.
So who will we target? The senators, the representative, who has the power over that Secretary of Revenue rulemaking? Because isn't it, if the governor is behind this legislation, behind the advertising tax,
Is Virginia still a one-term
aren't they just going to tell the revenue
state?
secretary to do it?
Well, again, I think what you have to do, going back to get organized, you've got to approach each state.
Yeah.
Do your own internal analysis. What I have done, I think, quite frankly, is the most effective way, as a general proposition, is I have hired lobbyists on the ground, okay, who have all the personal relationships at the local level and manage those lobbyists, okay, and you find that they will know what the pressure points are, but as a general rule, many of them don't begin to know things in the depth that you would, or that a good lobbyist who is looking at it from a national perspective does. And, I found that working with them, pulling in local people, you can develop a mini plan, if you will, on a state-by-state basis.
And each state has its own peculiarities.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I'm from Rhode Island, and it's a very insular state. And just getting someone to answer your phone call, you have to. It's barely a state, yeah. Just getting someone to answer your phone call, you have to explain what high school you went to and how you're connected to that person. And
Are you related to Buddy?
I'm actually I'm not related to Buddy, but and that's only half joking. Yeah, that's only half joking.
And some of them can be wild. As most of you can tell, I'm from southern New York. All right. And from our part of the country, I was in one state legislature, I won't say which, and we had the committee chairman get offended by what a lobbying witness said. He took off his coat and wanted to go out in the hall and have a fist fight. Now that type madness can occur at the state legislature level.
It's
Perhaps
not
if that
Korea.
lobbyist had knew whatever he said that was going to set the chairman off, that it wasn't my lobbyist, by the way. But that type thing happens. The local people can. You've got to know them.
Anyone else in the blue over there?
Yeah, I'm actually a merchant. I was wondering if you could talk about the addendum New York passed, where it basically says, I guess if the affiliate certifies that they're only doing electronic links, then the merchant doesn't have the nexus, and which other states have that clause as well. It's a little confusing.
Well, I mean, only New York so far would have it, since only up until
Well,
2
I know
months
it's not
ago.
North Carolina.
Yeah, well, North Carolina it's 2 days old, or 1 day old at this point, and one business day old, and Rhode Island's a month old. So at this point, only New York would have it. And Rhode Island, actually, you may see some progress there, because I think the revenue department there has projected zero revenue, because they don't think it's enforceable. And so, there you have an ally. I think in Tennessee, one of the things holding it up, the legislature was all for it, but it got an opinion from the head of the Department of Finance that said zero revenue. And if there's a sign that it's not going to be enforced or supported, obviously, even though the law passed, you got a victory. In the white shirt and stripes?
Yeah,
You guys have talked a lot about the lobbying techniques, and the lobbying process. I'm kind of curious, as I look at this, as to really what is our legal standing? And I mean, in our ability to argue, once you get past the emotional stuff, I know the emotional stuff works. I mean,
The legal standing.
Yeah, in other words, there are certain things we know. One is that, the sales tax is there, whether it's the responsibility of the merchant or not to collect it, was in question. The second thing is, what makes it enforceable upon the merchant is the nexus, and whether, I think it's unfortunate that we're called affiliates, and I'm a publisher.
Sure.
That name didn't help us, but we didn't know it when it was chosen a long time ago. It's a matter of, what defines nexus. So,
Well, there was a case that I cited in California. I believe it was Borders. It was Barnes and Nobles or Borders. Tried to argue that their .com branch was a separate division, and did not have to pay tax. But all it was really was a fulfillment house for the brick and mortar. They used the online site to really drive traffic to their stores. And so since there was such an intertwined relationship between the two, it said the .com site was an agent, really, of the brick and mortar. Now, when you hold them separately, that's different. And I think what New York is doing is threading the needle a little bit from that type of decision and saying, well, if Borders.com is the agent of Borders, or can be an agent of Borders, well then isn't affiliate A an agent of Amazon? And they're just trying to extend that, I think, that string that links them. And frankly, I thought Amazon might prevail, and I was surprised by the New York decision. But so we really will have to see how that progresses. But it's a unique issue because obviously the online space is new, and there haven't been a lot of tax issues litigated so far, particularly when you have the congressional ban on use tax. So in terms of the legal position, there is a possibility that it could be enforceable under that kind of attenuated agency theory. Does that address the in the black?
My name is Beth Kirsch, and I work with Rebecca in the PMA. I actually worked in D.C. on Capitol Hill and as a lobbyist before I moved to.
Who'd you work for?
I worked for John Over on the House side. I worked for the National Wildlife Federation. I worked for the National Audubon Society as lobbyist. I did the Clinton Gore of California field campaign in '96. So.
You did? Did you know Kimberly Ray?
I'm sorry?
Did you know Kimberly Ray?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's been a long time.
We'll talk later.
Anyway, so, when you sit here and you go through it, I mean, lots of the things that you mentioned, are things we're doing now, and you talked a little bit about PACs. And, just having been in this community, I think PACs is kind of a reach for us. I think we can get a grassroots space going much, much faster than PACs. And I've seen a grassroots space be almost as effective. So I kind of was...
Well, I guess, because the Audubon Society, that would give you that.
Right, but we have that. We have, a database. Yes, and I was in, good guy nonprofits. I get that.
But I think I would draw a distinction.
Okay.
The Audubon Society is, close to 100 years old?
Yes, both of them.
And it has people there who are members, have been members for a long time, correct? In terms of affiliates, how many people in this convention do you think have been affiliates more than 10 years? Very few.
Well, let me jump in on your point.
So many letters into the legislator in California and into the governor, they turned off our letters. That's how.
Yeah, now
And I mean, you got to say, hooray, you did a good job. Right?
No, that is clearly a critical part of any campaign, and I hear what you're saying about often you can pull together people a lot easier to send an email or a letter than to write a check.
Exactly.
That said, you need to do them both, and to the extent you can get them organized as you're suggesting. Okay, if that's the first thing and the easiest thing, damn it, do it and do it quick. Okay. And you can work the checks too. But again, there's a whole smorgasbord, as you know from your experience here, that you should go down, check, and put together as best you can. And I don't know this industry to understand. It boggles my mind actually when I look and I see, well, here, 25 or 30 folks, okay, with as many people as there are at this meeting, and with as much as at stake. One of the basic things here you've got to figure how to do is to get them to wake up and really organize them at that point. But somehow, I don't know whether you do that through magazine, through messaging, through some type of email list you have. I don't know how you internally organize, but somebody, be it the association or associations there, has got to really pull folks in and let them know what's at stake.
All right, we have time for one last question. But very briefly, I think people are more likely to write a $100 check for a pack than what's the limit now, $2,900?
Well, 23, 25.
$2,500 check.
Essentially,
to their congressman. Last question, looks like it's you.
You had said it's critically important to get in at 2 o'clock in the morning, not at 11 o'clock at night. One of the
so to speak.
Yeah. Well, one of the problems that's come up repeatedly is, it's very hard to monitor 50 states or 45 states or whatever remains. And sometimes this legislation just gets committee and goes right to
Absolutely.
the floor.
Very quick.
It can be such an incredibly brief period of time. What is the most effective way to get early notice of legislation that's being discussed, even on an informal basis?
Well, yeah.
That's where associations come in, right?
Well, usually if you have an association that's adequately funded, okay, either the association through internal staffing can track that, or more likely, contract out with, there are several national tracking services, okay, that try to track pretty quick in real time all the bills that are introduced. That said, the point you just made is right. Sometimes it's like that, and it's already happened to me.
Yeah.
That's where you need to have, on key states, you need to have somebody on the ground who pays attention. Sometimes it can be done amazingly cheaply.
You might want to focus on the states that have the largest deficits.
That's what those you target in this business. Target big time where the biggest threats are going to be. Again, all of this though, you put together an overall program. If you do it on an ad hoc basis, you're going to be chopped up and
All right. We're out of time. Lunch is coming, and we have to give up the room. But we're available to talk outside the room to anyone. And
if anyone wants to, send an email or something, let me just give you an email address. I'll be happy to give you my thoughts. It's WAndrews at Butera, Butera -Andrews.com.